Hey, everybody, welcome to this edition of the LA Sports Hub podcast. I'm your host, Keith Rivas, and we'll be talking about the Lakers, Lonzo Ball, and some early Rookie of the Year predictions. And we have a great guest joining the show this morning. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the Sports Hub audience.
Hi, all. Hello, LA Sports Hub podcast. I'm Josh Martin of Bleacher Report and the Hollywood Hoops podcast. I cover anything and everything NBA, and it's great to be here today.
And the first question I wanted to talk with you about was just about the Lakers finally deciding to move past D'Angelo Russell this summer and trading him and Mozgov to the Nets for Brook Lopez and a couple draft picks. That when they did that with Lonzo Ball in mind later that summer and ended up picking him. How do you feel about the Lakers going in this direction, and do you feel that it was right to move on from D'Angelo?
I think it's the right direction, and if you're the Lakers, your move here isn't just about talent. It's about culture. You want to make sure that you are building a solid organizational culture, that you're moving forward with a group of guys that you believe in, that believe in each other and will follow each other. And I guess there was enough trepidation around the Lakers about D'Angelo Russell as a fit that they felt the need to move on from him. And some people were upset. They felt that the Lakers sold low on D'Angelo. You could very well argue that based on his statistical contributions and some of the talents he showed on the court. He clearly is a guy who can score the ball, can pass the ball pretty well, handles the ball pretty well. Not the best athlete, but basketball-wise has a lot of really good skills. And considering his age, 2 years removed from being the second pick in the draft, it seems like, using him to get off the Mozgov money seems like selling low. But you have to keep in mind, number one, the market for bigs in today's NBA, just how difficult it is to move more of a guy like a Mozgov, who's a slow-footed big guy who's not really a shooter, not the quickest guy. To be able to get off that money, I think is huge for the Lakers when you think about what their larger ambitions are, trying to go after multiple big-time free agents next summer.
Right.
What they're getting in return is a guy in Brook Lopez who is a very good NBA center, a guy who can shoot out to three now, can be a decent rim protector, and I think he's just a good locker room guy. And the bigger overarching point here is, again, it goes back to culture, that if you have concerns about D'Angelo's personality, you don't want him poisoning the well with Lonzo Ball. And so there may, in that sense, be some addition by subtraction if you're the Lakers.
And Magic Johnson has bought into the culture that Lonzo Ball can bring to LA. But do you feel that maybe Johnson and Pelinka have a little bit too high of an expectation for Lonzo?
I think they should have high expectations for him. I think that's what you want from a guy who you just spent the number 2 pick on, a guy who you believe will be a big part of your franchise going forward. I don't know that their expectations are too high, to be honest. I mean, look, I'm a little bit biased in this sense because I went to UCLA, so I'm an alum. I watched a lot of Lonzo Ball last year at UCLA, and all throughout the year I kept thinking this guy would be a fantastic fit on the Lakers, at least from an offensive perspective. When you think about what he does and the way he plays, how he makes his teammates better by keeping the ball moving, making quick decisions, getting the ball up court, getting it in different guys' hands. I kept thinking back to watching game after game, watching that Lakers team last year where you had a bunch of guys who could score, whether it's D'Angelo Russell, Brandon Ingram, Julius Randle, Jordan Clarkson, et cetera, guys who could score, but they really had to do a lot of work to get those scores themselves. Whereas with a guy like Lonzo, he makes the game easier for everybody else by getting the ball to guys in their spots, spreading the ball around. Guys play harder when they know it's coming towards them. And Lonzo really showed that talent at UCLA, the way he lifted up that team that the year before missed the NCAA tournament. He comes in, everybody plays better off the ball now. Bryce Alford, Isaac Hamilton. You saw freshman TJ Leaf. He was a first-round pick in large part because of what he was able to do with Lonzo's help. Ike Anigbogu gets drafted. playing alongside Lonzo. He just made everyone better. So I understand where Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka are coming from with their expectations being so high. Obviously, there's always a danger when you set expectations at a certain level, especially for a guy in Lonzo who essentially is a hometown kid. And considering how young he is a kid coming into this man's league. So there's going to be, I think, a lot of rough patches in this rookie season. There's going to be ups and downs. But I think over the long haul, it is reasonable to hope and expect that he will be that young player who can be, if not a bona fide superstar, is at least the type of guy who can make his team and his teammates better by the fact of him being there.
And how much would you say that his dad, as loud and sometimes people would say, I think would be a good word, would be ridiculous, and some of the stuff that he claims or says and whatnot. But how much of a distraction will LaVar Ball be to his son with the Lakers?
He was no distraction to his son at UCLA, so I would expect even less of a distraction among the Lakers. I think that's – say what you want about LaVar. Like, I find him entertaining, if not controversial at times. Certainly he's made more of a kerfuffle on the AAU scene this summer with the way some of the stunts he's pulled with his son LaMelo Ball's team with the big ballers. But as far as his helicopter parenting when it comes to his kids at higher levels, he showed at UCLA an ability to stay away. He wasn't involved, and he didn't come down to practices and whatnot. He showed up to games, but he was not a distraction to Lonzo. And keep in mind, too, that this is someone in LaVar Ball that Lonzo has obviously known his whole life, been around his whole life, dealt with his whole life. He's very well aware. You talk to him, he's very well aware of his dad and the type of personality that his dad is. And Lonzo is not like his dad at all, personality-wise. He's much quieter, much more focused. He's not into the spotlight and all that. He's focused, it seems, on basketball and just sort of living his life. So I think he, if anyone, is well-equipped to deal with the specter of LaVar Ball as it may or may not be, it's Lonzo, because he's the oldest son, and he's had that attention from his dad his entire life. And so I think he'll know just as well how to fend that off, if it needs to be fended off, at the pro level.
Do you think maybe then that everybody on the outside looking in, you mentioned how well Lonzo obviously knows his own dad, but do you think it's a misunderstanding that we all have, or some of us have, of what LaVar's intentions are with Lonzo, and maybe that'll change as time goes by with Lonzo in the NBA?
Yeah, I think right now it's LaVar is an interesting story. He's easy to flock to. Look, in media, we flock to, we're flies or moths or whatever, flocking to the bulb, and whatever the nearest thing is, we're going to attract to it. We're going to create conversation topics around it, and that's just how it goes. And LaVar is, I'm sure he understands that as well. He knows it's part of what he's trying to do to create a brand for his family, to generate interest in his family, and create business out of that end of things. And so I don't really see it as being anything more than that. I think it's very easy to have feelings about the things that LaVar says and the things that he does. But at the end of the day, I don't find it particularly consequential one way or the other.
And one of the weapons that Lonzo is going to have this coming season, and we'll see how he continues to fit with the team, but after another great summer league from him in Kyle Kuzma, can you talk to us a little bit about how you feel Kuzma is really going to fit in as a rookie, and if we should buy in on the hype that he's kind of got from this summer performance?
Look, talent has never really been an issue with Kuzma. The issue with him going back to college really was effort. Would he bring the effort consistently? Would he play hard, possession to possession, quarter to quarter, game to game? In college, that wasn't always the case. And, that at Utah, he was on a team where, there really wasn't a lot of great cohesion in that way, and guys were trying to really more looking out for their own a lot of times. But you saw him in Vegas with the Lakers. He played hard. He ran the floor. He got after it on the boards. Obviously, he shot the ball remarkably well, 48% from three, 51.4% from the field, scored almost 22 points a game. And he made plays on the defensive end as well. So he was a great two-way player in Vegas. Vegas can often lend itself to mirages, but I'm not going to necessarily write off Kuzma. I did talk to some folks in Vegas who were very much impressed by Kuzma, some of whom even folks around the league, that is, some of whom even thought that maybe Kuzma would be the type of player who would then make a guy like Larry Nance Jr. expendable as a trade chip or something like that. So, we'll see if that holds up. But you look at the full package that Kuzma brings to the table, 6'9". He's further along, 22 years old. So he's better equipped for the pros, you would think, from just a physical and maturity perspective than a lot of guys coming in this year. When you think of all the freshmen coming in, he's a 3-year guy at Utah, has a good inside-out game, can certainly shoot it. If he plays hard consistently, I think he can carve out a nice role for himself, not just this season, obviously, but for some seasons to come, and be a solid piece within the Lakers' rotation.
What kind of help do you see a guy like Kentavious CaldwellPope bringing to the Lakers?
Well, I think first and foremost, you think of what he can do defensively. I don't think he's a great defensive player like what he's been building in Detroit, but he's a good defensive player, especially on the ball. And that's what the Lakers are going to need next to Lonzo, because we've seen from Lonzo going back to high school and college and in summer league as well, he's not really a great on-ball defender. And that's not uncommon, really, among young point guards coming into the NBA. Like, if you're trying to guard Russell Westbrook and Chris Paul, Dame Lillard, John Wall, Steph Curry, you go on down the line, all the top point guards, you're probably going to get roasted more often than not, whether you're a rookie or not, but especially if you're a rookie. But defensively, I think Lonzo has done his best work off the ball, getting in passing lanes, blocking shots. It's funny. So I actually spoke during the season, this past season, to another writer who was doing a profile on Lonzo, and he asked Lonzo, what's your favorite thing to do on a basketball court? And Lonzo told him blocking shots, which obviously is a little surprising for a guy who's, a pass-first point guard. But, he's a guy who really does like to play the defensive end. He's just not great on the ball. And it kind of makes sense because as a player, as an offensive player, he's great at using passing lanes, dishing the ball, sort of anticipating. And that's where it really serves him defensively, is being able to play off the ball, get in passing lanes, create havoc that way. But that's not really the way you want to play if you're playing on-ball defense, if you're guarding the opposing team's point guards. So you bring in a guy like KCP, you can ask him to shoulder that burden for you, to be that top wing defender alongside a guy like a Brandon Ingram, who showed a lot of potential in that way. KCP is also, he's not a great shooter, but he's about league average, so he can be a contributor in that way, finishing, shooting from the perimeter. I think he'll be a nice placeholder for the Lakers this season, and if they like him, and depending on how things shake out with free agents next year, maybe he comes back. But I think that is still very much to be determined. At least for now, he's a young guy who age-wise should fit in decently well with this group, and skill-wise on the defensive end should fit in well also.
And then I wanted to ask you too about Jordan Clarkson. There's been news that, or rumors at least, maybe news now, but that the Lakers are at least considering trading him at some point to free up cap space for next summer. Is he the kind of guy that they should be trading, or is that someone that, as part of the young core that they're trying to build in the middle of chasing superstars next summer, is that the kind of guy that they should want to stay in LA?
That's tough. It depends really on what you're getting If you're trading Jordan Clarkson, if trading him allows you a better shot at a super or at two superstars, let's say at a LeBron James and Paul George combo, or maybe it's Paul George and Boogie, or Russell Westbrook is involved. We don't really know yet, but if the cost of that is trading Jordan Clarkson, I think you'll take that all day. And obviously, Jordan has come a long way during his time with the Lakers, at least from an offensive perspective. He's become a better shooter. He's learning to play better under control. So he can make some plays. He can play some point for you. But look, he still sort of struggles on the defensive end. He still gets out of control sometimes. He still can be very streaky. So I don't know that if you're the Lakers, you're looking at Jordan Clarkson as being anything more than potentially a sixth man or just someone to come off the bench and score and provide some quickness. Because at this point, he hasn't shown himself to be a truly complete player. He's 25, so he's not – he's over the hill, but he's getting to that point where you wonder what his ceiling is and whether he's reached it. So I think if you're the Lakers, you do have to consider very strongly, I think they will, the upshot of potentially moving him and what happens if they move him, what they can move him for, and who comes as a result of him being moved.
And is this a team that you would say this coming season that they're a team that could make the playoffs, or do you still think they're about a year away?
I think they're still a year away, at least. I think they'll be more competitive, though. It wouldn't surprise me if the Lakers are sort of in that mix for maybe the 8th seed, heading towards April. So maybe mid to late March is when, things start to change a little bit, but maybe they're still hanging around, and if they can finish, 10th in the West, that is still a big step up for them from being, last place in the Western Conference, essentially. So at that point, you're talking about going from 26 wins to maybe mid-30s, which is another big step after they won 17 games during the 2015-16 season. So it's a step-by-step thing for the Lakers. And who knows, if certain things break right, if Lonzo really does have that galvanizing effect on his teammates, if Brook Lopez is an impact player, if Brandon Ingram is really ready to break out as a real star in the NBA, there's some potential to really sneak in. But the West, everybody talks about how great the West is. I don't think that. Well, I guess to some extent the changes of this summer changed the depth of it, because we look mostly at Paul Millsap going to Denver. That really changes that situation. But it's going to be hard to crack that top 8 in the Western Conference, to say the least. So I wouldn't say the Lakers are likely to make the playoffs, but I think they will be a more competitive team. I think they'll be more fun to watch. And that in itself, I think, is a huge step, especially when you're talking about going into next summer, trying to lure some of the big names and show them that, hey, this is a place where we're ready to win. Just add you and one of your superstar buddies to the mix.
Speaking of superstars, which guy would you say has the biggest chances of landing in LA? Because LeBron has been in the mix because of his Hollywood stuff that he does off the court, and Paul George with sort of a homecoming kind of feel. Russell Westbrook, that same kind of vibe because he went to UCLA. But out of all the bigger names next summer, is there somebody that stands out to you as the Lakers' number one guy? And is it still Paul George like a lot of the rumors think it is?
I think Paul George is the most likely of next summer's free agent superstars to join the Lakers. He's through one means or another has been made clear that he wants to come home. He wants to come at least closer to home, come to LA. He has a home out in the Calabasas, Hidden Hills area. Not that that's uncommon for guys all over the league, but I guess it's something for him to consider. He's made it clear that he'd like to head west. And look, there are folks all around the league who are convinced that he's not going to stay in Oklahoma City. Even some folks from the Pacers who will tell you that there's no way he's staying in Oklahoma City. So from those indications and the folks that I've talked to, I would be inclined to believe that Paul George, above all others, will be the one heading to the Lakers. Because even if you look at a guy like LeBron James, you could say, well, he has his other businesses and whatnot here. Well, realistically, if he's coming out here, he's not coming out here to run his businesses. He's coming out here to play basketball. He has people running his businesses in LA quite successfully too right now. Now, if long-term, obviously, maybe he wants to live in LA, I think his kids go to school out here, then sure, maybe that's a consideration. But I think LeBron right now is much more concerned about where he can win. And if the Lakers somehow show that they have what it takes, not just to win, but to win at the highest level to compete with the Golden State Warriors, then I think he'll give it some serious pause. But I don't think that that's necessarily anything better than a 50-50 shot, whereas I think Paul George, unless the Thunder go on some incredible run this year, get to the conference finals or they get to the finals or something like that, I would expect him to head west.
And what would you say a Kyrie Irving trade to Phoenix, if that ends up going through, does that change anything for how the timetable for the Lakers? Does that push it back a little more? Because like you said, the top 8 is going to be hard to crack. And if another division team can get a guy like Kyrie, and given how strong the rest of the West is, does that push the Lakers back one more season? Or
no, I mean, I don't think so, because so much of the Lakers' strategy is contingent on free agency. So if they go out into the market next summer and they land even one superstar, I think that puts them in playoff contention. If they land 2, it puts them probably even an echelon above that. So I don't think Kyrie coming to Phoenix would change that. What it might affect is which stars the Lakers could get. I'm not entirely convinced that Kyrie leaving or getting traded would actually impact or cause LeBron to leave Cleveland. If anything, I think maybe it's something that he would want, because then the Cavs could get a package back in return that would potentially allow them to continue to contend now and make them a more viable contender over the long haul. But generally, I don't think it's going to keep the Lakers from potentially making the leap into the playoffs one way or another, in part because it's yet to be determined whether Kyrie Irving is the type of star who can really carry a team and be the leader of a winning team, because he's been basically the sidekick to LeBron these last 3 years in Cleveland, and prior to that, the Cavaliers were just a mess with him as their number 1 guy.
And then lastly, I wanted to ask you about Rookie of the Year projections in between Markelle Fultz, Josh Jackson, Jason Tatum, Lonzo Ball, the other guys that were taken at the top of the draft. Is there somebody, maybe it's Lonzo, maybe it's not, but is there somebody from the draft class that you already see kind of making a front runner type of case for the best rookie?
That's a tough one, because you also have to factor in Ben Simmons with the Sixers.
Right.
He'll be a rookie. Obviously, he missed his entire what would have been his rookie year last year with a foot injury. You could envision a scenario where he and Markelle Fultz will sort of split votes potentially, because they'll both be guard spots and they'll both be creating, and they'll be sort of, I don't want to say diminishing each other's stats, but certainly impacting each other's production. I guess beyond that, you would look at maybe Lonzo with the Lakers, depending on how quickly he's able to adjust to the NBA game and sort of the ebb and flow of his season. A lot of folks have been impressed with Dennis Smith Jr. in Dallas, and I think he's got a lot of potential for that, because they don't really have a young magnetic star. Obviously, there's Dirk Nowitzki still there, so he's a huge factor, and Harrison Barnes has come up nicely for the Mavs. But I think Dennis Smith Jr. could really be an impact player there and put himself in the mix. So I don't know if Josh Jackson strikes me as that type of guy, because you think about what wins Rookie of the Year. Typically, it's someone who puts up more eye-popping numbers, someone who can score and then maybe do something else, whether it's get rebounds or dish out assists. And I don't think on a team with Eric Bledsoe, assuming he's still there, and Devin Booker, that there's going to be a lot of breathing room scoring wise for Josh Jackson. But I suppose it's possible, but this could be a very interesting year just because the draft is deep and because you had some teams, some players towards the top of the draft, specifically Jason Tatum, going to teams where they might not play a ton from the outset. So that could really open up the race a little bit, and we'll see some more guys get involved. But I wouldn't be surprised in the least if Lonzo is at the very least, a part of that discussion and maybe at the head of that discussion, depending especially on what his assist numbers look like.
Well, thank you, Josh Martin from Bleacher Report, for joining the show and giving us some of your insights on the Lakers, Lonzo, and just kind of what to look forward to with this rookie class coming in. We hope to have you on again soon.
All right, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Anytime.